This is a very special episode of Defining Moments as I get to interview Paul Shen, who is my uncle. He was a financial services executive who worked at Citibank for 36 years before transitioning into full-time pastoring. In this episode, we discuss the important moments in his life, such as seemingly being miraculously cured of a heart defect at birth, immigrating to America from Japan at just 16 years old, getting his MBA, and getting into Citibank, and being switched into a new role mid-career, losing most of his net worth during the 2008 financial crisis, and then having his heart problems resurface as he's retiring, becoming a pastor, and recently being diagnosed with terminal heart failure. In this episode, we're going to, get to see behind the scenes of his life. His life has impacted thousands of people, and in this conversation, we just get to hear more about who he is and things that he's learned in this incredible life and the wisdom he has to share with us. So here's that conversation.
Thank you so much, Uncle Paul, for coming. I am just, I wanted you to come on because I thought that you have had a very interesting life, and I really respect the choices that you've made, and especially through all the hardships. And I wanted to know more about your life, maybe some of the things that I wouldn't have known otherwise. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to share with us and the family and the audience more about the important moments in your life that really defined the trajectory of your life and who you are and became.
Sure.
So maybe you could share with us the defining moments of your life, starting from the very beginning. So,
sure.
Yeah, how does that sound?
All right. Well, it's great to be here in California, and I think I represent this unique, what I call the 1.5 generation in United States. I'm a 1.5 Asian American, but all people, actually, all Americans, their ancestors or forefathers were immigrants to this country. And so I represent those, probably your parents' generation, the boomer generation, that was born and raised in Asia or another country, and they came to America for the better life, of course. And so we had the benefit of both our original culture as well as the American Western culture as well. Okay, so just a little bit of background of my family. I have 3 older sisters. Now, my parents, like most parents, they want a son to carry on the name. So after they got 3 girls in a row, they really wanted a boy, so they named my third sister in Chinese Lai Di. In Chinese, Lai Di means come son. And so her English name is Lydia, phonetically, but that name worked. So their 4th baby was me, so it worked. But the first defining moment is as soon as I was born, the doctor said I had problems with my heart, and they will have to operate it on me, do some surgery into my heart as a baby. So my parents said, no, the baby's too small. They don't want that. So my father had some Christian businessmen, and they all prayed for me, and miraculously, I was healed of the condition so that I didn't have to go through the surgery. So this miracle converted my parents to become Christians. And so that, I would say, is my first defining moment where after I was born, my father and mother raised us in a Christian environment. We went to a Christian church, Chinese Christian church in Tokyo, Japan.
Okay, so you grew up in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Wow, so how did, our family is Chinese. How did they end up in Tokyo?
Sure. So In 1949, Mao Zedong and the communists took over the mainland China, and at that time, the President Chiang Kai-shek took what they call the nationalist Chinese to Taiwan. So my three sisters were all born in Taiwan. Then my father moved to Japan for business, import-export business. So I was born and raised in Japan. But since we were Chinese, instead of sending their kids to a Japanese school, they sent us to an international school. It was Catholic schools, and because these international Catholic schools are almost like prep schools here in the United States. It preps you to come to college in the United States.
What was the breakdown of ethnic groups in the Catholic school?
Oh, excellent question. Yeah. I went to what's called St. Mary's International School. There were 100 students, and like 50 nations were represented because the children of international businessmen, like expats they call them, or people who work in the embassy, they would come to our school. And my sisters went to an all-girls Catholic school called Sacred Heart. And same thing, like that's what they call us, the international school. About all 50 countries are represented. Yeah.
So you went to an all-boys school.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that growing up?
Yeah, no problem. Well, to me, looking back, you don't have this boy-girl distractions, right? So I didn't mind going to an all-boys school or my sisters going to an all-girls school because, besides the actual time you're studying, there's social activities, dances, and different events where it's mixed.
Yeah, I heard it can be really hard to be a foreigner growing up in Japan because they're like protective of their own. I forgot what they call it, but No.
Japan is known to be a homogeneous country, and it's very hard to get citizenship there. Absolutely. But having said that, at least in the 1960s and 70s that we grew up in, all Japanese loved everything American, right? Because Americans pretty much, even though they occupied Japan, they gave them the new constitution, the democratic principle, the capitalistic society. So Japanese all admire Americans. They even respect Chinese. They took the language kanji from the Chinese language. So actually, as a foreigner, at least when we were there, it was no, shall we say, discrimination bias because they respected foreigners. Of course, having said that, they still see Japanese as Japanese, and they see you as gaijin foreigners. But no problems with prejudice or bias. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you had mentioned that your parents converted to Christianity. They put you guys in Catholic school.
Yeah.
Because I think this will tie in to your story later. Right. I wanted to know, how serious were you? How genuine was your faith, like in high school, right? Or because going to Catholic school is it's hard to know. Do you really believe? Or,
that's right. So the requirements of enrolling in these Catholic schools in Japan didn't require you to be a Catholic, okay? So you can be of any faith, very freedom of religion. The only thing, though, is religion. There's a course called religion that all the students have to go through. But it was good. I got to understand what the Catholics believe in. You go through catechism. And yes, I had some Japanese friends who became or converted to Catholicism, and some of them told me just to get some brownie points with our teachers who were Catholic brothers. But no problem at all. It was freedom of choice, and you didn't have to be Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. You had mentioned that there's that you're part of this 1.5 generation.
Yes.
In the current generation in America, when we're growing up, they kind of I feel like the American culture is very much so like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Absolutely.
What are your dreams? Yeah. Was there that too when you were growing up in Japan, or was the mindset different?
Yeah.
So what was your
It's a
dream?
great question.
Yeah.
So as you know, the Asian Eastern culture, priority is the welfare of the whole group. Like in Japan, there's 120 million people living in a very tiny island, if you will. So it's important to respect each other, be polite, and you do everything basically for the benefit of the community or your family first. Whereas, of course, the Western American culture is individualistic to say, do what's right for you, achieve your own goals and dreams. So there's these two main differences. Having said that, we were Chinese, overseas Chinese in Japan. So like we talked about earlier, I mean, we're not going to really be accepted for like influential positions in the Japanese society. So most Chinese or Koreans or Filipinos who are living in Japan, they will send their kids to these international schools so that they can come to America for the American dream, which is to get a great education, to get a job here, and to settle down. So in answer to your question, we saw the best of both worlds in terms of the culture, and we will ourselves pick what is the own cultural value that we want to establish for our own selves and family.
So you always knew that you were kind of destined to go to America.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. And so did you get there?
Yeah, great question. So all three of my sisters, they graduated from high school and they came to college in the States and they settled down. In my case, this is what I call my second defining moment. In 1972, that's when President Richard Nixon went to China in a big diplomatic move to say to the world, we're going to accept Mao Zedong, your communist government, as politically the representative government of China, and no longer subscribe to President Chiang Kai-shek's government, which was based in Taipei, Taiwan. So as soon as United States does something, United Nations followed and Japan followed. And so in 1972, my passport was Taiwan passport because we were from the Republic of China. So my parents were afraid that once the communists come over, they may not let me come to the hated America. So they sent me, as soon as the diplomatic changes happened, within 1 week, they sent me to United States early. Yeah. So I came here for my last year of high school in a Catholic boarding school in Plattsburgh, New York.
Wow. I mean, that must have been a jarring experience. You said that within 1 week of that announcement, already packing your bags, you got to get out of here. So what were you feeling at that time?
That is a great word. It was a jarring experience. I didn't really want to do this because I grew up with my 40 or so friends from first grade all the way to 11th grade. All my friends were in Japan, but I knew if I wanted to reach my goal of coming to the States for a college education, this is what I had to do. So, so I was only 16 at the time. So age 16, I came to Plattsburgh, New York. It's a city 60 miles south of Montreal, Canada, small town, and I went to boarding school. So it was tough, right? So my senior year, right? No proms, no friends. I know nothing. So all I can do is study. So the good news is I studied so hard. I got the best GPA of my high school career. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So you were. So were you valedictorian?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I should be in American high school. Whoever has the highest GPA should be the class valedictorian. Yeah. But the school in Plattsburgh didn't want an outsider to get the most prestigious honors. Yeah. So the school created this special award called the Award of Excellence, and they gave it to me, Paul, because you had the highest GPA.
Okay.
But the valedictorian will go to the second students with the second highest GPA, and salutatorian the third, because they wanted their own local boys to get that honor, not me. So I understood that, but that's when I learned the lesson in life that life is never fair. It was totally unfair, but that's what life is.
So you were kind of bitter about it.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So now it is somewhat fair because you only had 1 year there. So they did have to kind of play with the special circumstance, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so then did you get into a good college?
Yeah, so I ended up going to University of Rochester in New York, and I majored in economics, got a BA in economics, and right after that, I knew I had to get an MBA. I wanted to get an MBA because that's my personality, very much outgoing, and I like to manage people. So I only applied to 2 schools, UCLA and Rutgers. And I've always wanted to live in California, sunny California. My third sister Lydia did.
Yeah.
But I didn't get into UCLA, but I got into Rutgers. So I ended up going to New Jersey for my MBA.
Did you want to live in LA because you watched like American television? And,
Sure.
And so you were like, oh, that's so nice. Like,
Yeah.
do you think that's the main influence, or
The main influence is sunny California, the weather.
the weather? Okay, so you knew the weather. I mean, but you were at international school in Japan, so it's mostly through word of mouth and fellow students telling you about how great California is and things. Okay, just checking to see how, like, because if you're all the way in Japan, it's like, how do you know what's going on in California? But I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so after. So you already knew that you wanted to get an MBA.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were able to, like, did you have to do undergrad and then get an MBA, or was there like a mix?
Yeah. So you get your bachelor's degree, and then
you
go
straight
for
away
it.
you went to business
Yeah,
school.
I did.
Okay. And was it you had mentioned it was hard to move to America at 16. Did it start to get better in college, or were you still isolated, lonely, no friends? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had a great undergraduate life because I was very much involved in extracurricular activities, if you will. I was actually the manager of the varsity basketball team because I love basketball, but I'm not tall enough or good enough to be on that team. So I was a manager statistician. So like that, I was the president of the Asian American Student Association. I was even in the student senate. So my college experience was great because college offers so much extracurricular activities.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So so then you got your MBA. Is there any significant moments? I know that these might not be like real defining moments, but were there moments in college or maybe during your MBA that were really significant for you?
It's a great question. So pretty much like most of us, right? In college, you make the best of the independence from parents and all that life offers, right? So I would say I had fun in college, right? So my GPA wasn't the best.
Yeah.
But by the time I went to grad school, it was no social activities, just make sure you get good grades and prepare for the career. So my MBA I was really focused on the actual, I majored in finance.
Got it. So, I mean, you mentioned having fun and that a typical undergrad experience is you get away from the parents, you have fun. And from my understanding, one, you went to Catholic school growing up, very strict, very disciplined and strict.
Right.
Plus, I think I heard that your mom, our grandma, my grandma, she was kind of strict too. No, but maybe not as much on you. Or how was that growing up?
Yeah. No, her greatest influence on us is how important education is. So she was not strict in terms of discipline or curfew or whatever when we were growing up, but she just felt your priority is to get good grades and have a good education. So she always used to quote this adage, right? Knowledge is power, right? Knowledge, the importance of education,
So as long as you got good grades, you could kind of do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exactly how my dad raised me.
Okay.
As long as I got good grades, I could do whatever else I wanted, which I think really came back to bite me as an adult because as an adult, there are a lot of things more important than grades.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're totally right. I mean, for all of us immigrants, we come to America for the opportunities, and we know the best way to do it is to graduate from a good college and get a good education. So that trumps everything else. But I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Looking back, we parents, immigrant parents, we need to be more balanced. It's not just education. You're absolutely right. We need it to be a little bit more balanced in all of life.
Yeah. And you had mentioned knowledge is power, and there's obviously a lot of truth to that. What I came to realize as an adult, though, is that knowledge is not everything.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the belief that just knowing the right answers was everything.
Right.
Just being smart, and that's what everyone valued me for.
Right.
I think that some of the things that I was missing is like humility, love, discipline, and also like knowledge of self. I think that's another
self-awareness, knowledge,
self-awareness.
Right? And in short, emotional. It's not just IQ, but the emotional quotient. And I think the last 20 years, at least in the Western world, they're emphasizing EQ. Even businesses, the corporate world, are emphasizing there needs to be a balance of EQ and IQ.
Yeah. So I'm learning that now. When did you start to learn that?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was very much achievement oriented, right? And that's what immigrant parents instill in their children, because you're a minority in America. So distinguish yourself by getting the best grades or achieving everything you want. So I think I probably had that kind of mentality and framework even after college, early on in my career. And it's a good question. To my next defining moment, I think the defining moment in my career was, by the way, I have a 36-year career in banking with Citibank, okay? And in 1987, Citibank, like almost all major corporations, every 5 or 6 years, maybe more often, they're reorganized because the marketplace situation always changes. And the best way to cut costs and get your stock price up is if you consolidate your operation, cut staff, lay off staff, right? So that happened in 1987. So what happened in 1987 is, by that time I was age 30, and I was already a vice president at Citibank. I was a marketing director of our retirement products, IRA, individual retirement account. Okay, and I felt I had it made because at age 30, I had a good title, vice president. I had a great corner office. That's one of the most visible perks that you've made it when you have a corner window office, and it was on West 33rd Street in Manhattan. It overlooked the Hudson River, almost like your view here of the San Francisco Bay. I had my own personal secretary that did all the typing and everything, and I had a staff of 6 people. And because of this reorganization, they said, your job is going away, but good news, we'll give you another job. And they assigned to me a new job of investment product development manager. Okay. So I had nobody reporting to me, no secretary, and they just gave me a cube. Now that I see your office here, you don't even have walls to separate yourself.
That's the modern tech culture.
Open space. So I don't got a cube. So like in anything in life, when something uncontrollable happens to you, you either choose to make the most of your new situation, have a good attitude about it, or you can complain, sulk, and withdraw yourself, right? So I decided, okay, I'll make the most use of this time. So it turned out really well because I learned how to do a word processor and to work with the laptop computer for the first time. I learned Excel. I learned PowerPoint. PowerPoint and Excel were all skills that I really needed to know myself for my future career assignments. So then to answer your question, I found out, after 1 year of this, I said, I'm so glad what happened, because if I was in the old job, I'm relying on my secretary or my direct reports to do stuff for me. But in this new world, like I needed to know all these computer skills, PowerPoint, Excel. I needed, in this day and age, you need these skills in this tech world. So I look back and I said, this was good. So
Yeah.
That's-
And then you became a pastor too,
I know,
eventually,
I
right?
know.
So you needed those skills.
So that's
Yeah.
when I learned that the world changes. The values and what you think is prestigious or important, it really changes. And you need to, from time to time, step back and reflect and see where you are, where you want to go, what are your skills, and what kind of skills do you need to get there. And it's only when crisis or uncontrollable events happen to you, then that's when you get a chance to do that realistically. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, my mom. I think my mom. I was in Florida with my mom like
Yeah.
a few months ago.
Yeah.
I think she told me that the story about how you got that Citibank job was really interesting.
Oh, it is. It is. Okay. So, earlier, I know you were pressing me. After you got your bachelor's degree in college, I think it's good for people to try to get a job before going straight to school. But I was what's considered an international student. So international students are only allowed to have 1 year of practical training, the visa, if you will, to stay. So I had to go to business school, my MBA, to be more marketable
Okay.
to get a job. So after I got my MBA, I interviewed, it was basically my schools in New York City, really. So all the big companies like IBM, Xerox, Chase, Citibank will come to campus to interview.
Yeah.
So I went to the interview, and when Citibank came,
Yeah.
right, instead of nowadays, most companies will send an HR person to do the initial screening interview.
Yeah.
And, if you were to interview 12 to 15 people, they'll probably invite 2 or 3 back to the company headquarters for the real set of interviews. In this case, Citibank sent the vice president of the operation who needed the jobs and 2 other managers to do the interviews.
Wow.
So they liked me so much that I had to interview with all 3 people on that same day.
Yeah.
And the next morning, I get a call to say, we'd like to offer you the job. And I was so
Dang.
delighted, and I really liked Citibank, so I accepted it. So then a month later, when I went to my first day of processing with HR, they said, what is this? You're not an American citizen. You don't even have a PR green card. We're not allowed to give jobs to people who don't have a green card or citizenship.
Yeah.
So So
That was a scary moment.
it was a scary moment. I was praying as they went to consult the senior HR officers, and they told me go home and we'll find out. The next morning, they said, we weren't supposed to offer you a job because you don't have a PR or citizenship, but now that we gave you a written offer, we're not going to renege on that. So Citibank hired an immigration lawyer on my behalf to apply for a special H-1 visa to get a professional work visa to let me work. So, yeah, that was a miracle. That was a miracle because I wasn't supposed to get a job, but the way it turned out, I ended up getting a job.
So you probably were one of the first like immigrants without documentation, like H-1, to get hired at Citibank.
Right.
Wow, which is that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I was gonna say that. I was gonna ask. You said that the VP and the managers really liked you. What do you think it was about you that made them like you?
Excellent question. So in my first 5 years of working in first 6 years actually of working in Citibank, I got 4 promotions from management associate to assistant manager, assistant vice president. And I kept on saying to myself, I never asked for these promotions or why? And then I found out. Because during these same 6 years in my church, I was the volunteer junior high school, Sunday school teacher. I was a youth director. And I figured it out. When you have to teach Sunday school, right? And Sunday school is not like teaching English or mathematics. When you teach spiritual lessons, you're talking about behavior modification, if you will. So you have to be a real good communicator. You have to be a very good persuader to be able to teach rowdy middle school kids to be engaged and to convince them that what the Bible teaches is true and you should apply it to your life. So then I figured out, because of my church experience, I developed the communication skills to make not only presentations, to be persuasive. And as you may know, in America, in corporate America, whether you have a marketing degree or finance degree or a tech information system degree, if you want to go up in management, you have to be a good communicator. So now I found out that the reason why they kept them promoting me in my job is because I was a good communicator, which I developed those skills in church.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Like, actually, as you share this, it kind of reminds me of John.
Yes. He
Like,
says it himself.
Yeah.
He says it himself. He would say, by the way, John is my oldest son, and he doesn't have the best grades, but he took after me. Like he's very good in relationship skills.
Yeah, he's
so
really
he
good.
works for Mondelez and he is in a high senior management position. It's only because of his communication presentation skills.
Yeah, and the same story though. He got promoted way faster than the average person would have. It's remarkable. So I think we do learn a lot from our parents. So, and okay, I mean, this is amazing. You said you spent 32 years at Citibank?
36, actually.
36 years? Dude, it's such, you talk about generational difference. It's so different.
Yeah.
Because especially here in the Bay and tech, gosh, part of it's personality, but I switch jobs like once a year.
I know. No, Daniel. It's a different corporate workplace environment. So in my generation, which is from the 60s, 70s to the 80s, we were taught that get a job with one of the Fortune 500 companies and just stay with them and they'll take care of you.
Yeah.
They give you a good pension and all that. So that was what we were all raised to believe. But I think the advent of the information age, the computers and technology changed things. So now these big companies are the first to always reorganize and cut staff, and they have no loyalty to you. So, I grew up with, and I think also with your dad, who actually worked for.
And we'd have no loyalty to the companies either.
Right.
It's about us and our vision.
It changed.
Yeah.
We thought it's best to be loyal to the company, they'll take care of it. But now the company has no loyalty. So now the young people are smart. Like, get what skill set, knowledge, and experiences, and then move on to another company. And that's usually the only way you can get a salary jump when you switch roles. So it's different between your generation and my generation.
Well, yeah, and the other generational difference is that our society is becoming more and more transactional.
Yeah.
And so it's not about the values of loyalty.
That's right.
And honor. It's more about, is this relationship profitable?
Yeah.
And how do you maximize the economic output?
True.
And you see that even coming into like the dating relationships too. It's
true.
It's not so much about loyalty, but it's like, are we really compatible? Are we gonna are we gonna help each other achieve our vision?
Yeah, true.
But I think that ties into another philosophical discussion that we won't go into.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to ask you was 2008 a defining moment for you?
Absolutely. 2008 is when the stock market, I wouldn't say it crashed, but it probably lost over close to 50% in value. It was also when the investment market really, it started with Bear Stearns and many of the brokerage firms went bankrupt. The banks, the biggest banks, we had to be bailed out by the government. This is 2008, the year that President Barack Obama was elected. He had to give the big banks $67 billion in the bailout money to rescue the banks. So that was a tough year financially for all. At least
especially you
in United States. Yeah, so
most of your net worth is tied up in city stock, right?
Oh, you know about that. So you know about that. Okay, if you were to ask him what is the biggest regret you had, the one biggest request is I own city stock.
Yeah.
And, when you're in management, big corporations, they reward your performance with stock options.
Yeah.
So every year I had a good year, I would buy and exercise Citibank stock because you get it at a much cheaper rate. Yeah. And I just kept accumulating it. So I think it's okay. In that 2008, I had 2,000 shares of Citibank stock worth $50. So that's $1 million, really, $1 million. But then because of this financial crisis, the stock went down from 50 to 40 to 30. And when it started to go lower than 30, I started to worry. But then, you see, in mid-1980s, I was working for Citibank when our stock went from 33 down to $2. This is during the 1980s. There was a Latin American debt crisis, and our stock went down too. And at that time, the president of CEO of Citi was John Reed. But then the banks came up with a rescue strategy, and then within 1 year, the Citibank stock that went down to $2. Within 1 year, it went back up to 33 and even higher.
That's insane.
Right. So my problem is, and I think this is probably for everybody, is you kind of remember what happened in the past. So I felt, well, when the stock goes down to 25, 20, don't sell, because if you sell the stock that was worth 50 to 20, then that's when you're going to realize the loss. But if you don't sell it and you just keep it, wait till it goes back up, then everything's okay. So that was my biggest regret, because it never did. The Citibank stock went down from 50 to $1, which was just $1 million went down to just $2,000. And of course I didn't sell, because then I didn't want to lose that much money. But now, even though the Citi stock is back up to the mid-40s, they did a 10-for-1 reverse stock split. So
it's not really, it's $4.
So what does this mean? I mean, what this means is life changes. Almost everything in life changes. So my generation, besides the philosophy of working for a good company for life, the other thing was investment strategy was buy blue chip stocks and hold, buy and hold. Because blue chip stocks like IBM or Xerox or Kodak will never go out of business. And of course, Xerox and Kodak already went out of business. So see, that was my biggest lesson learned. Sometimes things change, and an investment strategy that worked in the bank will not necessarily mean it still works.
No, the world's changed a lot. I mean, this generation, because the culture changes, and if you look at this generation, it's crazy. Like, have you heard of the meme stocks? Have you heard of meme stocks?
No.
So what's happened is that so what memes are like things that get repeated as kind of like jokes on the internet.
Right, I know what memes are, yeah.
And so what happened was that what caught on in our culture, my generation, is that communities would buy stocks completely independent of independent of the stocks. And so they sent like these stocks like GameStop.
GameStop, they did that,
Robinhood might have been part of it. What else? They had like Bed Bath and Beyond. Dude, I wasn't really that much part of it, so I don't remember all of them. But the point is that a lot of the people in my generation wanted to screw over the big finance people of your generation. And we said, F Wall Street. And so all these people had shorts on these like really failing companies. And they just short squeezed the hell out of them. And like things like GameStop went from like $4 to like $200 just to screw over the big
it worked
the big
for
man.
A while.
And it worked for a while. Obviously everything's gonna return mostly back down to the fair market value. But the point is that things change. Is that you can't continue to rely on the same patterns across the decades.
That's right.
And with technology moving so fast, the time that it takes for generations to change is shortening.
Absolutely true. True.
Yeah. True. So, well, you had mentioned that, wow, like you lost most of your net worth in 2008, and I mean that's sorry that you had to go through that, but how did that change you as a person?
Excellent question. Yeah, my sense of security was always for people who work for a corporation with 401k. You get your quarterly 401k statement, and you look at the market's doing well, my 401k is doing well. That really gives you a sense of security, really. And it's an excellent question. So
because I want to know how about you.
You're right. You're right. So I felt hey, don't place your security on money
Yeah.
and what you own here.
Yeah.
So it caused me to really re-examine what's really important in life. And it's really relationships. The relationship you have with your spouse, if you're married, with your children, or with your parents, that's most important because market can go up and down. Almost every physical asset you have can
Yeah.
get devalued
Yeah.
or depreciated. So it caused me to not worry so much about my 401k or retirement plan and just, in my case, of course, it's to trust in God and focus on building good relationships that with the people you care for. And,
But-
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true.
Yeah.
But that's easier said than
Okay,
done.
okay.
And what I mean by that is
Okay.
like, to lose that much of your money and security.
Yeah.
Like, well, there's two things. One is that it does affect your relationships,
Yeah.
right? Because even within marriage, it's like, the stress
Yeah,
of
of
that
course,
financial
stress,
stress
yeah,
is
yeah,
going
yeah.
to cause
Yeah,
strain
yeah.
on the marriage
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
cause those
Yeah,
negative
yeah, yeah.
emotions. And I think that what I've seen as a Christian in the church and being a Christian myself is that we can over spiritualize our tragedies.
Okay.
And like brush them off by saying like, you know what, like, I should be storing treasures in heaven anyway, or like relationships are the most important and it's just money, as a way to cope with the
Right,
grief
right, right,
without
right.
actually processing the grief of that.
Right,
so
right.
do you think that that you didn't take time to process that, that crisis, and how did that affect your relationships and your mental health at that time?
All right. Of course, we all have a coping mechanism. And the first thing I said is, okay, out of the $1 million in lost value, actually half was actually what I paid into in buying the stock based on my bonuses. And the other half was just appreciated value.
Okay.
So looking back, it was a key lessons learned. In hindsight, if the similar thing happens, I should have sold that 25, which was a cost of what I paid for average.
It's
cost
hard
of
to
what
know
I paid.
though. You never know.
You never know.
Because it can bounce back up, and then you regret that that way, right?
So
Yeah.
my first coping mechanism. Okay, it's not. I really lost $500,000, not $1 million.
No, it doesn't feel like that though. I know the
Okay.
psychology. Once you hit that million, you feel like it's yours, and
All right.
it all feels like loss.
All right. So, but no, I value lessons learned, right? That's how you learn in life. So, of course, from that point on, I never ever bought Citibank stock again. So I make sure I'm more in diversified funds. So that's number one. And number two is, but all my investments wasn't in city stocks. So I'm glad that we still had enough to fund our 3 children's college education, if you will.
Yeah.
So that was good. Of course, what it meant was that you didn't have to save cushion for your retirement or to go on nice vacations, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But at least I was very fortunate because still I was diversified enough so that the most important goal is to fund our children's education.
Yeah.
That wasn't affected. So that was fun. Yeah. So I was very fortunate from that.
So your
point of view.
faith did buffer you from that because that would be crushing for most people. Your faith buffered you and protected you from that kind of really becoming depressing and
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said that. So then, did it mess up your retirement plans? What happened after that?
Yeah. So of course it's less, but then you build up again. But you're absolutely right when you said about the faith, because I knew money's not the most important thing. So it did buffer me. It's true. I could have very easily gotten depressed, right? Which I had in previous years, but now it was okay. It was the support of my family and other friends. Yeah.
Okay, so you said you worked at Citibank for 36
6 years. Yeah.
Wow, it's like, well, I think the one thing that shows about you is that you're a loyal person.
I am a loyal person.
You value loyalty.
I am.
And And so then how did did you just end up retiring and
Yeah. So during the 36-year career, there were opportunities to go work for Chase or whatever, and people, especially even my wife or my friends, would say, "Why don't you go work for Chase? Better offer, better promotion, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, I can't. They're my competition. I have to stay loyal to Citibank. But now you know what? It's because Citibank bailed me out, right? They gave me my first job even when I didn't have the visa to get it.
Yeah.
So that's
You felt indebted to them.
I do.
You felt indebted to them, and you held on to that.
And this is a spiritual analogy too, right? Unless Christians really understand the debt that Jesus Christ paid for you, then you won't value that relationship. But only when you realize how much in debt you are, then you are totally faithful. So you're right. That explains why I never jumped ship, if you will. But having said that, out of the 36 years I worked for Citibank, I have 15 different types of job, like financial analyst, operations manager, branch manager, investment product manager. So it wasn't as if I was bored. Like within this one corporation, I had different types of jobs. So yeah.
And so during the time that you were working at Citibank, you got married, you had kids.
I did.
So how did that happen?
No, everything worked out really.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge was, which is the one thing I envy about your generation. I live in New Jersey, suburban New Jersey, and my commute to come into work was 2 hours. One way. So every day I would commute 4 hours a day, times about 5, 20 hours a week. That's a lot of time spent on just commuting.
Yeah.
So, so in answer to your question, because of the nature of where we lived in my job, during the Monday through Fridays, the commuting took so much out of me.
Yeah.
And on weekends, I needed, like Saturdays, to do chores and recuperate, and Sundays in ministry. So so that really affected me. And that's why I'm so envious of the current one of the benefits of COVID was
remote work.
You're all allowed to work from home. That is a tremendous advantage that your generation has right now, to be able to work from home and not to spend so much time in commuting.
Yeah. So how did you juggle that? Like working full time, 20 hours of commute, and family and church. What was that like?
Yeah. So, of course, nobody is superhuman. You can't do everything. We only have 168 hours in a week. So what I did was Monday through Friday, it was pretty much work and commuting time. Yeah. Then on the weekends, and this is definitely my mistake, I prioritized ministry. You know, before I became a pastor, I was very much involved as a lay leader in the church. In hindsight, I should have prioritized more time spent helping out my wife and raising my 3 kids while they were young. Again, I had this older mentality. The older mentality was wives are best to take care of toddlers and when they're young, grade school. And then I will become more involved as a father once our kids are in middle school and high school age. So that was my mistake. I wish I had prioritized spending time with my kids when they were in grade school more than waiting until they're in middle school. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. At the same time, I feel like it's so tough because, like you said, we only have 168 hours. And it's like, well, if you prioritize your family, then there wouldn't have been time for ministry, right?
Yeah.
And so we all have to make that choice. Yeah. And I'm just so glad that, that John, Chris, and Amanda, they turned out so great.
Yeah, praise God. Yeah,
praise God. But even though, what you're saying is true now. You devoted a lot of your life to the church.
Yes, I did.
What made you do that?
Sure.
How did you do that for so long? And what made you do that?
Sure. Really, it's all Thanksgiving goes to my wife because my wife is an excellent mother, and that's why the reason why our 3 children turned out well is because largely she is a great parent. So that's number one. Number two is everybody needs to understand what your calling or your mission in life is, right? And so for Christians, it's really to use the gifts or talents God given you to serve Him, right? So I really felt that I had the gifts to serve in ministry, so that's what I did. But you know what? Even when I was mid-25, early 30s, I've always asked God, do you want me to go to seminary to become a pastor? And the answer was no. No, just stay where you are, and you don't have to be in full-time ministry to serve Him. And looking back, now I know why. It's because every church needs strong lay leaders, if you will, right? Marketplace leaders. So so now I know why. And but actually, in 1980, when my wife and I became empty nesters, in 2014, that's when our youngest, Amanda, went to college. We were praying to say, God, what do you want us to do? And that's when he said, okay, there's an open youth pastor position in church. I prayed about it. We prayed about it. And God said, I want you to take that. So God only gave me the green light to become a pastor late in my career. So after the 36 years of working with Citibank, I went into full-time ministry as a pastor, and I also went to seminary school at age 58, age 58 to be qualified to be a pastor. Yeah.
So when you switched to becoming a pastor, what were you expecting, and what happened that you were not expecting?
Excellent question. Yeah. Okay. So there's this famous quote that's attributed to Winston Churchill that says, you make a living by what you earn or what you get, right? Right? All of us, we need a job, career to pay for our daily expenses. But he said, but you make a life by what you give. So that was a key philosophical concept that made me switch. Because when we became empty nesters, like anybody else in your audience who are empty nesters, you've done your job, you've raised your children, and if they went to college, you put them through college. So that aspect of parenting is over with. So now what do you want to do with your life? So I felt, well, it's now time to give back. So that's why I wanted to serve as a pastor to more directly, that there was youth pastor position, to give back to young people, to raise them and give them Christian instructions. So that was a key philosophical change. But I know your question was,
what was unexpected?
Okay, here it is. The hardest thing for me was 35 out of the 36 years I worked for Citibank, I was always a manager. I was always in charge of people. I ordered people what to do. And since you have the benefit of performance appraisal raises, you can hire and fire people, they have to listen to you. But when you become a pastor, you don't have the authority. Everybody in your church is your boss. They tell you, I like that sermon, I didn't like the sermon, why are you doing this now? So the biggest and hardest lesson learned was humility, because as a pastor, you can't leverage your title or authority to make people do it. They're all volunteers, So that was the hardest thing to do, that you, as a pastor, you're really the humble servant of everybody else in your church.
Pastors have a tough job.
They do have a tough job.
You have to be really resilient, because it's hard to separate the criticisms people are giving you from criticisms about who you are as a person.
Absolutely. So you know what's really funny? In the 80s, when I was a deacon at church, I felt, being for the corporate world, we need to do annual ministry service, and we need to ask our people, how do you like the sermons? How do you like the worship service? How do you like our lunch program? But the pastor then were vehemently against that, because who wants to have a performance appraisal where the 200 people in the church gets to grade you, right? So they were against it. But I came from the corporate side that says, in order to improve our, shall we say, product of church services, we need to get feedback. And you hit it right on the dot. It was only when we designed the survey to take away comments, the evaluation of the pastor as a person. Like we're not gauging how spiritual you are, but we're just asking for what you thought about the Sunday worship experience and how we can improve. So that was a breakthrough. So you're absolutely right. If you try to ask for any feedback in ministry, you have to distinguish the difference between the actual ministry or the event versus the pastor or the person in charge. You hit it right on the dot.
And I mean it is difficult though, because I think that I think the church can learn from the corporate world.
Yes.
I think the feedback is important.
Yes.
But what's hard is that, you know, you should be asking about how people are liking your sermons.
Yes.
But, you know, nobody likes to hear that their sermons suck
boring
or whatever. And you know, and it's so the church world is so competitive now. It's like the corporate world. It's competitive.
It is.
But, you know, I think that to be a good leader in church, we have to be emotionally healthy and secure in ourselves, so that when we read that people don't like our sermons, they don't like our leadership style, that we don't take it personally. And unfortunately, too many leaders in church haven't built that ego strength. And so then they're not ready to take that feedback. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I guess maybe really quickly we could touch on how did you build that inner strength of like, oh, this is who I am, and like even though these people are going to say this, I'm going to let it go. How did you do that?
You really need a good support network. So and so for pastors, the hardest thing is, you know, the people in church, or in my case, I had people in the church who were my good friends, but once I became a pastor, it's a different relationship. So for a pastor, you cannot really be 100% vulnerable and share all your problems or shortcomings with anybody in the church, because either it will get out or it's bad. So every pastor needs at least 1, 2, 3 other pastors who understands what you're going through, but yet it's not going to affect your ministry right then. So I've averaged what I did. I have my 3 former pastors who I'm a position before. One is in Texas. One is 2 of them is Texas. One is in Syracuse, upstate. I will consult with them and I will share with them. And locally, I also have a network of other pastors that we get together once every 2 months for time of sharing and prayer. But still, again, it could be competitive too, because like in our church, there's Chinese American church. You know, to answer your question, I managed through the tough times through the support network of former pastors who understands the position I am and who I can truly be myself and be vulnerable to them. So that was, and then let me tell you the other group that I have, my 3 sisters, because they're family, right? And like, it's so interesting because when I was a pastor, in my early stages, I would have my own children and my sisters listen to my sermon or read my sermon script and give me comment. My children in the beginning will give me the pros and cons, right? But my sisters always only give me the positive. They never, ever criticized anything. And that was so helpful because you need somebody to encourage you and affirm you, right? And my sisters, who really could have given me constructive criticism, they just gave me nothing but love and praise and compliments. So my 3 sisters really helped me.
I'm so glad you shared that. Yeah, we need the encouragement. Like, it's hard to keep going. And so, wow, that's thanks for sharing that. We all love the relationship that you and you know,
my siblings.
Your siblings have. It's very heartwarming. So, you know, I have to ask about your recent diagnosis.
Oh yes.
What happened? How have you been? How have you been doing that?
Thanks. So last year, exactly 1 year ago, my wife and I decided that 2023 will be my last year as a pastor, a full-time pastor, because the whole world needs to change. Oh, it's like, so basically we thought like I should step down as a full-time pastor because I really felt that my church needs a younger pastor. Like I'm boomer generation. I felt we need a pastor, a millennial, to be able to truly understand and build rapport with the millennials and the iGen generation. So that's the first thing we decided, okay? But everybody can understand that because that's the current political thing, right? Everybody thinks the top Republican person is Donald Trump, who's old, and President Biden is very old. And I definitely agree, whether it's in politics, in the church, in a corporation, yeah, the old timers need to start to step aside to make room for the younger generation. Absolutely. So what's really interesting is after my wife and I made this decision last year, in March of this year, all of a sudden my heart took a bad turn. To suffice it to say, I have what's called cardiomyopathy, where my heart muscles is too weak to pump blood efficiently. So I started to feel the symptoms of really being tired, shortness of breath. And when I went to see a doctor, I actually had to be hospitalized in July. And basically they said, Mr. Shen, you're in your end stage of congestive heart failure, where they told me, unless you get a heart transplant, you're not going to survive a year. So I got the shock. Well, the good news is I was already planning to retire anyway, so I just sped up my retirement by 3 months to focus on my health. So, but it was a big shock to say that I need a heart transplant. But then it's so ironic, Daniel, because I came into this world where the doctor said I needed a heart surgery, and in my last stage of my life, the doctor is saying again, you need another heart surgery, you need a transplant. So it's kind of really ironic, but it's tough. But I'm very grateful that God gave me, actually 67 years of a good life to be able to serve Him. So, yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that we're here having this conversation. Does it feel different to know that you're in, if you don't get the heart transplant in the end stages, like what goes through your mind in every day,
Excellent question. So, in all these years, not only as a pastor, but as a youth director, I used to, a couple of years, give a workshop on being prepared. And it's the exercise I would give my youth, which says, if you were told by your doctor that you have a terminal cancer, or terminal illness, and you only have 1 year to live, would that make a difference? How would you change your life, right? It's a nice exercise to go through. But for young people, it's too hard because they're so young. They think they're invincible, so it's hard for them to do that. So in August, when I was told that unless you get a heart transplant, the doctor, I kept on asking them, how much time do I have? And pretty much they said 50% of people in your condition will live 1 year. Will live 1 year. No, will live 6 months. And only 10% will make it for 1 full year. So then immediately I went into the mode of, okay, so now I need to activate my plan B, which is if I only had 6 months to live, what would I do? So I went through that, and I'll share this with you. Number one was I wanted to make sure my immediate family members are saved about their faith. Number two is my sisters and my siblings. Number two. And number three would be my relatives, and to spend time with them. So actually, as you may know, within 1 month after that, I had a 1 week vacation with my own children, which was good. And then within 2 months, I had a nice get together with my 3 sister siblings. And then now, in one sense, I have an opportunity to kind of meet up with my nephews and nieces, and because relationships are the most important. So those are my plans, and then of course there's the updating the will and everything else like that. So it's so interesting because I'm executing the strategy. Now, having said that, as a Christian, I'm not afraid of dying because as a Christian, we know that there's a better life to go to after your physical life on earth is over with. But I've been telling them, I'm so scared of pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. So that's my problem. I'm not scared of dying, but if I were to go for a heart transplant, and not only the actual open heart surgery, but I talked to a couple of heart transplant patients. The first year after you get the heart transplant, it's so difficult because the body is doing everything to reject this foreign organ object. So the doctors have to give you like 25 different drugs to suppress your immune response systems. So very, very painful and it's hard. So that's what I'm afraid of. But to answer your question, I told my family, and that's why it's good to meet with family. From a selfish point of view, it's fine. After I get to do all my bucket list items, the reduced list, then I'm ready to go. But of course, my family needs me to stay as long as possible. So, so it's a great question. So, for the sake of a family, I have to do everything possible to extend my life as long as possible here on this earth. Yeah.
What time do we have? What time is it?
Oh, it's probably 12 o'clock, so it's probably time to wrap it up. Yeah.
Well, I guess, do you have any regrets?
Really, none. I mean, honestly, I can say if I had to do it over again, I would have sold my Citi stock early at 25 instead of 50. That's number one. And if I had to do it over again, I would have been more involved in my children's lives earlier on rather than when they got into middle school. That's two. But, everything happens for a reason, really. And the good thing is, as human beings, we always have a choice. And I just felt no matter what situation you're in, whether it's an uncomfortable situation that happens to you, like geopolitics or being laid off or switching careers, you can choose to have a good attitude about it. And what's most exciting about life is after you've gone through, weather the storm, if you will, you look back and you can really see how you became a better person having gone through that adversity. Because only in adversity, you kept on asking, when do you become self-aware and start to make adjustments? It's only when you have adversity or crisis do you make that. If everything's going well in your life, you're going to stay the same selfish, arrogant self. So crisis and adversity is good for you. So looking back, I'm glad. And looking back, like I always wanted to be in California. Life didn't turn that way, but it's okay because there are so many benefits to having been in the East Coast. So, so that's what makes life exciting. Anybody can choose to be happy, to choose to make the most of the situation you're in. Yeah.
Wow. No, definitely the attitude and perspective is really important. Yeah. But a lot of that is determined by how you're raised and so. What was the biggest time of adversity for you?
Oh, excellent question. Honestly, I think it's right now. Oh. It's because during this month, I have to get myself prepared to be eligible for heart transplant. So I have to retake all these, I would say, 15 different CT scans, X-rays, MRIs, because I have to prove to the doctors that the rest of my organs are healthy. Because, to get a donor, a good functioning heart donor, which unfortunately is when people pass away in accidents or for other diseases, that you'll make the most out of it, so that they don't want to give a good heart to somebody where your other kidneys or livers are failing, so you're only going to get a couple years worse from this heart. So so that's why I'm going through all these medical appointments and tests, And I joked. So then in January next month, I have this appointment with the heart transplant doctors. They're going to interview me, and after that, my current doctors will have to present to this selection committee. Literally, they call it the selection committee of why I need to get a heart transplant, and they approve. Then they place me on priority 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 6 different classifications.
Yeah.
It's like trying to apply for college all over again.
Yeah.
So I feel this is my hardest challenge because of all these medical appointments I have to go through. Of course, the risks and the pain I feel. 2 and 3, it's such an unknown, right? It's like we all want control. I have no idea whether they're going to accept me or not, right?
Yeah.
The unknown. And if they accept me, I'm going to be on a waiting list.
Yeah.
And once you're on the waiting list, you cannot travel 3 hours away from the hospital. I'm going to write down trying to go with NYU.
Yeah.
So it's this uncertainty, right? So so I would say I'm in the most difficult position right now.
Yeah, and it sounds like the other layer of why it's so difficult that you had alluded to earlier is that you want to enjoy the last year of your life.
Right.
But you kind of want to just do what you want to do and be done with it. But it sounds like because you love your family, you're doing it for them.
Yeah.
So, well, I commend you for keep fighting and to keep having hope.
Yeah.
And obviously, we want to spend as much time with you as possible.
Right.
And so we hope you get the heart and that everything works out. But really sorry to hear about all the pain and the hardship that you have to go through, the uncertainty. But we're here with you.
Thank you.
And I'm just so glad to have you here to share your story with us. And
thank you.
Anyway, love you, Uncle Paul. Thanks.
Thank you.